Good afternoon, listeners. We are here in New York City for our next episode. Welcome to episode 14 of The Power of You. Bill, we're here in New York. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling elated and uplifted. 21 stories.
We didn't walk, we took the elevator. So, well, we're pleased to have you back and excited to record our next episode today. So we'll get straight into it. And Bill, the topic, I know we've just recorded some short Q&A snippets on this, but the topic I really wanted to go into in more depth was this topic of alignment. And I think in kind of spiritual kind of terms, the word alignment is kind of bandied about quite a lot. And really, I wanted to translate that actually to a wider audience and to help people really understand what does this mean and how can I recognize it within myself and my own life. So I guess maybe to open up and start our conversation today, what is a way that we could kind of describe alignment to people that are perhaps maybe not grounded or listening to that kind of terminology every day?
Well, I think the term in the kind of a spiritual usage that we're using it in right now is being in alignment with your dharma, your mission, why you are living in this body, in this time, in this life, the purpose, the unique combination of genes and other elements that make this life that you're living unique in the universe. So being in alignment with that as opposed to being a copycat drone copying the multitude of everybody else who's wearing the same clothes, using the same way of talking, watching the same movies and TV shows and sporting events. And so being in alignment with your own, with the universe's purpose for you and your purpose in life. So in that sense, when you get into alignment, you do get into higher states of consciousness where you're more effective, you do a better job, the universe goes your way. Some work has to go into that in preparation of getting a vision of what you want to have happen the next day. Also, what could go wrong and what you do if it goes wrong. So you're prepared for the day, you're living your mission, you're planning your mission, you have an understanding of where your dream vision is going to take you or where you'd like it to take you. Whether you get there or not, you're not attached to. You're just enjoying the journey because you've chosen this journey so that you can enjoy your life. And it's on the way to your mission, and if the universe wants to make it come true, it will, and that'll be even better, but it doesn't have to be that way. So that may be hard for people who haven't ever heard about it before to picture themselves doing. I have an alternative way that works for me that it means the same thing. I essentially oversimplify everything, not all the time, but this particular tool oversimplifies things into two states. I can either be in this state or that state. It's much more complicated than that, but I reduce it to two states, and one of them is living the nightmare. If I'm living the nightmare, I know I'm not in a high state of consciousness, I'm not in the flow state, I'm not effective, also I'm not happy. And why am I that way? Well, probably I'm afraid of something, either of something that hasn't happened but could, or something that's happened. So that's living the nightmare. And then there's the other state where I have the guts to rise above that. The courage to say, hell, okay, lose my job, lose my wife, lose my car, lose my this, lose it all. If it's happening, then okay. What's my plan? What am I going to do next? And maybe it's going to lead me to something better. I have an open mind about it. So those are the two states. The one is the courageous, noble, here I am, God, what do you want me to do? Something that seemed bad to me is happening, but maybe it's not bad, that's just an interpretation. So lead me, where am I going? Versus living the nightmare. The reason that works for me is because I understand it so well. I've been in both states for so many times that it has instant meaning for me, and I immediately say, of course, my whole mission is to share this technology this psychotechnology with people. So I have to walk the walk, don't I? I have to do it the right way. So I have to get out of living the nightmare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so really, like, alignment in kind of simpler, like, grounded terms is being connected with your mission and with your purpose. And for you use these two different states of mind, like, am I in the nightmare or am I living the dream, right? And that dream can look different than perhaps you envisioned or knew, but it's like a deep grounded belief that this dream is taking you to a place that you're meant to be and you're meant to go. But then there's this nightmare, and I want to go into this a little bit more because the idea of living the nightmare, right? It's, you shared there, it's a lot of fear. It's like, what if this goes wrong? What if something bad happens? And this kind of perpetuates. And I feel like right now, in society as a whole, there is a lot of people that might describe waking life as a nightmare, and they may feel like they're in that kind of movie set where it's just a horror show, essentially, because we see everything that happens on the world stage, and obviously media perpetuates that a lot. But for people that are in that kind of living nightmare state, I mean, how do they start to make the bridge? Because I think for anybody to jump from a nightmare to a dream can feel quite, well, I don't think people believe that the dream is even possible. When you're in a nightmare, it feels impossible to even think about dreaming, never mind living the dream. So I guess it's about the bridging that, right? How do we get from that nightmare state to even just a hopeful state, or even just a curious state? How do we bridge that? And yeah, I'm keen for your thoughts.
Well, the Stoic philosophers, 400 BC, they asked that question. They asked it of themselves. Like, Epictetus was a slave. His whole life he was a slave, and it was pretty bad. And he didn't believe in God, he didn't believe in hope. All of that, he was too cynical and realistic. So he took a different path, a path of saying, whatever it is, it's not going to get me inside. I'm just going to overcome it by sheer strength and courage. I'm just going to, by determination and willpower, I'm not going to let it get to me anymore. So they could break my body, and I can't do anything about it. I'll just make sure not to scream. Maybe I'll keep a smile on my face. Or if it's not quite that bad, I will rise to the occasion. I will do my very best, but I'm not going to let them see me sweat.
I think hope is a really powerful and strong word, and something that more of us, I think life would feel easier, even if you feel like you're living in this nightmare at the moment. I feel like if you're able to ground yourself into the word hope, I feel that could open so many doors and possibilities, really, because I think what's challenging, and I relate even from my own experience, like being in this kind of state of everything's bad and what's happening with the world, and I know how that feels, right? And I think one thing that kind of grounds me is, like, even if you don't believe that you can have hope now, it doesn't mean you will never believe that there is hope. And I think understanding that if you do feel right now like helpless and there is no hope. Like, know that, at least have hope that there will be hope later on. And I think being able to, like, hope is really important, but I think also in your current nightmare, or however you perceive it, if you can kind of look at that in a subjective way and try to understand, what are you meant to learn from this nightmare, like, before you wake up, right? Because it's like, if you're in a nightmare, it can't last forever, right? You have to wake up from that nightmare at some point. So I think remain hopeful, but kind of while you're in that, can you try to understand what you're meant to learn from it?
I agree completely that looking for the lesson, first of all, it takes your mind off of the wallowing in self-pity, and it gives you some degree of constructive thinking going on that will lead you toward actions that you can take. One exercise is a piece of paper, break it into 2 columns. In the left-hand column, write all of the things that are nightmarish, that are happening that you don't like. And in the right-hand column, write down the things you can control. You know, some of those things in the left-hand column you might not be able to control, but you might be able to address some of them a little bit at least with actions you can take that this exercise will cause you to think about, and then you can write down those actions. And once you take those actions, the universe will show you some signs that it's working in a positive way. That will automatically energize hope, because if things have been ragged for a long time, and you've taken a couple of small steps and they get rewarded, it encourages you. It gives you, it gives you courage. The other thing is the idea that you can just look at history and look through the high points and the low points, and you see that it's true that all things must pass. Eventually things stop being that way and they get to be a different way. And sometimes they go up and sometimes they go down. Over a long trend, you'd have to say things are better now than they were before, because we didn't have medicine. There were all kinds of things. We didn't have ChatGPT, you know. So things are better now than they were at the very beginning. But they do go up and down, and you know, so the long trend line is slightly up, but the year-to-year thing is, you know, jagged up and down spikes around that through line. Anyway, so yes, hope for hope. Religion did a really good job of giving people faith, which gave them hope. Religion has kind of suffered from the trend that science took. Science around 1800 started to go, up until 1800, science and religion were not at war with each other. Since then, they've declared war against each other, or at least one way has declared war against the other. But we're coming out of that the percentage of scientists today who are open-minded that, yeah, it is possible that since we each know the consciousness exists, each one of us is a consciousness, so of course, we exist, therefore consciousness exists. We can't say, no, consciousness doesn't exist. So once we admit that consciousness exists, we can't deny the possibility that we're all part of one big consciousness. There's nothing unscientific about it. And nowadays, you know, Wheeler, Hawking, Einstein, Heisenberg, there's dozens of scientists in the 20th century, and now more than ever. Science is opening its mind to these possibilities, but the public hasn't heard about it yet. So the public is still in, religion, you know. Of course I go, I give money to my temple, and I do the rituals, but do I really believe? I really don't believe. Maybe there's something, but it isn't a God that's benevolent and cares about me. Look at all the suffering in the world. This is the way people think. So, the suffering in the world is something we caused ourselves. We have free will, and we're doing that to ourselves and to each other. It's not God doing that to us. God is letting it happen because we are learning from it. And slow learners maybe, but it depends on how you look at time. Like, this species has only been around 200,000 years. The universe has been around 14 billion years. So this is a baby species. Of course we don't know what the hell we're doing. We're still playing with our toes. We don't know what's going on. So we can have hope that at least our grandchildren and great-grandchildren are probably going to get out of the mess that we're in and we caused. And maybe, out of hope for them, even though we may not be enjoying ourselves right at the moment, we can work harder to make the present world a little bit better. A little kindness to each other, even people who have the opposite political views, a little kindness to them. Things like that, stepping out of the ordinary, considering new possibilities, trying something new, looking at things more positively, not insisting on living the nightmare, just letting it float away downstream and trying to have more courage and optimism.
Yeah, so, you shared quite a lot there, but in terms of, for an individual, they might be in this nightmare, but actually focusing on what they can control rather than what they can't will give them hope. And I know from my own personal circumstances through the pandemic, right? That was a huge thing, and I know for me it felt quite overwhelming, but actually being able to return the focus to what I could control gave me a huge sense of forward motion. It gave me a huge sense of hope and actually helped me feel like I did have control, because I think what's really important is like we do have control over a lot more things than we think or realize. And I know it can be hard if you're, watching the news or, just living every day. Social media, it can feel like it's everywhere. You can actually feel suffocated by it. But I think, as you've said, it's like zooming out is really important. So like, if you can zoom out on your own life and realize that this is a chapter, it's not the end of the story, like that helps, right? And it might not feel it. It might feel like it's going on forever. It might feel like it's really, really tough and that you're never going to come out the other side of it. But as all storms must pass, right, so will this. If you can really try to anchor into that, that will help you. But also controlling the controllables and focusing on what you can control, which is your actions, your thoughts, how you spend your day, who you spend it with, what you put in your body, how you move your body. There is a lot that you can control. And while you can't control what's happening necessarily around the world, you can control your response to it, and then you do have free will over your actions. And if you can focus your energy and attention on that circle of things that you can control and therefore influence, you will feel so much more hopeful than if you just continue to stay in this nightmare state. So it kind of, the conclusion I'm alluding to is like the bridge really is you. Like, you are the bridge to take you from nightmare to hope. And then from hope, you hope that there's a leap then into the dream state, right? Like that dream life. But you are the bridge. And in order to be that bridge and be a sturdy bridge, you need to understand the infrastructure that is building you, like what is holding you up right now. And that might need a little bit of investigation. And anybody that seen like bridges getting painted or worked on. It's a year-round process, and people always say when you get to the end of the bridge, you have to start again. And it's the same with our human transformation. So if we can invite people to think of themselves as that bridge, to take themselves out of the nightmare into hope, then with that, there must be a sense of forward motion, or even if it's not excitement, it's a sense of progress, at least.
Yes, and possibility, and a clean slate, a blank sheet of paper, starting over, a new life, designing it your way. And even if it's initially just imagining what it could be like, it's fun. And it doesn't have to be realistic, it doesn't have to be unrealistic, it has to be whatever you do, because it's a creative process. And you have so much creative power. People aren't focusing on how much creative power they have. If they don't have an idea immediately, they think there's no way out. But 3 days later, they'll get an idea. And they can help the ideas come by imagination, by imagining the good things that they would like to have happen. And then the path to those good things will arise a week later. You know, just trust the process, trust your own capability, be open to all possibilities. It doesn't have to continue the way it's been.
Yeah, it is, I'm almost seeing, you know, you've said about history, but I think, you know, for anybody listening, even just zooming back on your own life, right? It, like, even not even going into history, just zooming back on your own life, you'll see those very distinct chapters, and none of them have lasted forever, right? And I'm sure, and you know, a lot of us have this, we look back with nostalgia. We don't remember that the pain or the suffering or the hardship. You know, you'll see people talk about their golden years, you know, when they were in their 20s and they were out carefree, and, you know, the music. People talk about their past in a sense of kind of like these rose-tinted glasses. Like, we forget the kind of hardship, if you like, because it was part of like the lessons, but you don't necessarily remember that. You remember the good times, right? And you remember the joy and the happy moments and those amazing memories. And it's really interesting to me how we tend to look back like that, but we don't see the present or the future like that, right? And isn't it interesting how we do that retrospectively, but we rob ourselves of that same pleasure in the now and when we look forward?
Yes. When it's all over and we look back, we see that the hardships we went through actually made us stronger and more capable of doing the things that we then did and accomplished, and that we look back on with great joy. And that the whole thing falls into place, and you wouldn't change any of it.
Because you need every single piece of that puzzle in order to paint your full picture, essentially. You need every piece of the puzzle. But that can feel hard if you're in a chapter right now where it feels tough, it feels like it's never gonna end, you feel like the world is out to get you, and like it's just bad news after bad news. Like, that can feel really, really hard. But if you can zoom out and trust that this is a puzzle piece, it's not the whole painting, right? This is a piece of the puzzle. But you will need this. You will need this experience. You will need this lesson for something at some point in the future. And what I try to talk to people about is like, can you see it like as you're going through life? It's like you're collecting tools in your toolbox, and like all these experiences are like another tool that you have got, another experience that you can draw upon at any point in time. And like knowing that and being able to frame it like that, you actually realize, oh, I've collected a lot of tools already, right? And then with that, knowing that you've collected, a bit like a game, you're collecting all the coins, right? Knowing that you've already done that, it kind of gets you a bit hopeful and excited about what else you're going to collect as you go along the journey.
Yes. Reflecting that way, in an objective way, looking back, would help anybody. Mm-hmm. Anybody, even somebody who's in a good mood, get in an even better mood.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think using the past, don't get stuck in the past, but use it as a kind of navigation towards the future, right? So, I think sometimes we can get really stuck being like, oh, well, that was so much better than this moment, right? I don't necessarily believe that to be true. Everything is a moment, right? It's not better or worse, it's just different, right? And if we can embrace that each moment is just different, it's taking that emotion, I think, out of that specific moment in time, because that, again, can cloud our logic if we let emotion rule actually what could be happening. It could be a perfectly beautiful day, like you've woke up in your home, you've got a loving family round about you, you've got a job that you can go to, you've got amazing food on the table. Your emotions can cloud that and make you think that your life is so much worse than it is.
Negative emotions, I have this term, emergency oversimplification procedure, EOP, which is living the nightmare, is when we're not alert to the fact that these automatic reactions within us are ruling us, and some of them are negative emotions, which don't do us any good. They're like an alarm clock. When the alarm clock goes off, we hear the ring, it wakes us up, that's what it was supposed to do, you turn the alarm off. But with negative emotion, we keep the alarm ringing. We should turn the alarm off and say, okay, what is it trying to warn me about? What is it I'm afraid of? Or, why do I feel bad? Oh, because I'm afraid of X happening. Okay, so what can I do about that? Where do I have control to make sure X doesn't happen, or I have an escape route if X does happen? So work on that. You won't be able to do that in an effective way until you turn off the alarm. We don't keep the alarm ringing, turn off the alarm, thank the alarm, it was a good alarm, thank you for that. But don't wallow in the negative emotion, get on to the solution. And the other thing is, all these other automatic things that go on within us are things that we just picked up when we were kids, babies, and we were imitating like monkeys, and we're still doing them. We're still imitating because we haven't had time to look at ourselves. We haven't had time to study ourselves and to clean out all of that conditioned mess that is still running our lives. So that, that's the work we have to do on ourselves, as well as, no one of our podcasts is complete without mentioning finding the dream job, the dream work, your passion work, what your real mission is in life, what you want to do. What are the things that you like doing, that you're good at, that other people praise you for, so where you can give value to the world. Those are clues. Maybe it's stuff that you just love doing and nobody's ever praised you for, but you just love doing it. That's enough. That could be it. That could be what you want to aim for in your dream vision of life. And until you know what your dream vision in life is, it's hard to do all these other things because there's no main propeller.
And I think that metaphor of an alarm is really, really powerful, because it's not saying ignore the alarm, because if we ignore the alarm, you'll be late, right? It's listen to the alarm, allow it to wake you up, metaphorically speaking, right? And try to understand, okay, almost treat it as a fact or as a data point. This emotion is my alarm, right? This emotion is my alarm. But what is it actually trying to indicate to me? It's an indicator. And as you've said, we can't think clearly if the alarm is constantly ringing. We need to silence that alarm so that we can take that emotion as an indicator but we need to turn it off so that we can actually be solution focused and problem solve, because you cannot problem solve when you're in this panic state, like an alarm is ringing. You can't think clearly, right? And it's the same with emotion. And like, emotion is fine. Emotion is natural. We all have it. But I always say this, emotion is just energy in motion, right? That's what it is. It's energy in motion. So just like we were talking about our lives, our history, looking back in time, if you step out of that for a moment, know that it too will pass, just like any storm, right? So your emotions will pass, this chapter of your life will pass, and this part of history will pass. It isn't the full picture, it's just a puzzle piece. So if you can inquire even onto that level around the emotion that you're feeling, and what is this, again, it's this frame of mind, what is this trying to teach me? What is this trying to indicate to me? When we do that, we're getting clues. These alarms, these emotions are clues. Treat them as such. They're clues in the treasure hunt, right? So when you realize, oh, actually, I've got this emotion, and sure, yes, I feel it right now. But if you can treat it as a clue, like, it's actually an amazing gift you've been given, because it's giving you some information or a tool in your toolbox to help you move forward.
This is kind of helping people discover how to play the game of life, not get beaten down by life. This is how to play the game.
Exactly. And you have the cheat code, and you actually have more tools than you even realize right now. You have more tools than you even know. And I think, we started this talking about alignment, and, we've kind of gone into hope and like our toolbox. But I think it's all connected, really. And because you can't have hope without knowing that you've got the tools, right? Or the clues. And you can't be in alignment without hope and those tools, right? So it is all connected in a way.
Yeah, it's all the metacognition of being able to pay some attention that you're not now paying internally. Even while reality is rushing at you from all directions externally more than ever before. I mean, that's why I think we got into this emergency oversimplification state, was the acceleritis that was caused by, we got these new brains 200,000 years ago, and then 6,000 years ago, which compared to 14 billion, it's really a small percentage of time. It's only been 6,000 years where we were able to write things down. We didn't have written language. That's, only 300 generations ago. That's an eye blink in time. And it's overwhelming us because we get so many ideas, and then we hop from one to the other, and they're rolling all over. Before we can assimilate one, the next 20 are on top of us, and we haven't been dealing with it in a systematic, calm, controlled way, because we didn't even know it existed. We still don't, the average person on the street doesn't think this way. That's why we're doing these podcasts, so they can reflect on it the way we have, and in their own unique ways, and come to grips with the fact that they've got to find their true self underneath all the other mess that's been kludged into their minds and their emotions by society, and find their real mission in life, and then go about it in a determined, disciplined, and happy way to get to where they want to be. And if they don't get there, they'll enjoy the ride.
I think the word that is just screaming at me as you talk right there is progress, right? Everything is progress, and at no point in time, one in your life, in history, in your day, no point in time is ever like perfect. It's just progression. It's progression on the previous moment, on the previous day, on the previous year. Like, if you are making progress, like, then you're doing better than most, right? So I think it's not striving for this perfect end goal. And yes, you've got this dream and you want to achieve that, but it's even there, it's never perfect, right? Once you, like I always say, it's kind of like a mirage. Like once you get to a peak, the top of a peak, guess what? A new one appears, right? So there is never this perfect state of like, that's it, I've done everything now, I'm perfect and everything's great. There is always more to do, more to learn, more puzzle pieces, more tools to grab, right? So I think the focus really is on progress, and progress is actually, and to circle us back to alignment, like progress actually is what makes us feel, and we know we're in alignment when we're making progress.
Yeah, we're on the radio beam to a good landing.
And I think that's probably kind of circled us back round quite nicely, but any kind of key takeaways or thoughts, Bill, that we want to leave listeners with as we've talked about alignment today, we've talked about hope, we've talked about the game of life, the tools that we're collecting, the puzzle pieces, being the bridge from your nightmare state into hope and then into ultimately your dream. We've talked about that progress. What are some parting thoughts that you would love to leave our listeners with?
Whatever happens, look at it as something that can fit into your plan and figure out how to make it part of your plan. Whatever happens. There's something to be learned in it, and there's something to be applied from that learning. So whatever happens, whether your initial feeling is it's good or it's bad, don't worry about that part. Let that part float away. It's, how can I use this?
Yeah. And I think for me, it's that reframe, right? It's like, what is this trying to teach me? If you take nothing else from this, please let it be that. Like, no point in time, no chapter, no experience will last forever, but it is trying to teach you something. So if you can leave with that today, what is this trying to teach me? That's how you'll know when you're in or out of alignment. So thank you so much, dear listeners, for listening to episode 14. Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, and thank you.
Episode here in New York City. We will be back with you next time.